Hi all, let's look at an amazing game from yesterday, Leela against Ethereal. It went into the sudden knockout pairs of games actually. It's a very, very tight match yesterday, lasting quite a few hours. So let's have a look at this game. Leela playing white, d4, d5, c4, c6. She had defended successfully with the black side of this, was now playing with the white pieces, and chose c takes d5, the exchange variation of the Slav. And now bishop f4, and we have the greedy looking queen b6. Leela obliges, not trying to defend the pawn. It's difficult to anyway, because the queen is actually hitting d4 as well as b2, so it's pretty awkward. And if a rook goes there, there might even be bishop f5 in some cases. So actually Leela makes a gambit out of it with e3. Queen takes b2. Ethereal is in good company here. There is actually a Mamajarov game you might want to check out in the pinned comment of this video. And after bishop b5, Mamajarov with black actually drew a game with Morozevich playing bishop d7 here. So eventually that was a draw. But in this game actually Ethereal plays knight c6. We have knight ge2. Okay, now bishop f5, and it looks as though it isn't black just to pawn up with queen c2 on the way. If the bishop doesn't come out, I mean that seems very, very logical, but let's say e6. This position with rook a1, the queen going to a3, is actually okay. For example, knight a4 shuts down the possibility of the queen going back to a5, and actually now rook b3 is trapping the queen. That's one dangerous example of the queen being trapped with e6. And if we look at this again, this continuation, let's say the queen tries to flee immediately to a5, then actually bishop a4 again is very dangerous, vacating the b5 square. And this is important. For example here, knight b5 now threatening knight c7 check. So knight c7 is good anyway here, because again the queen is being trapped. It's not to do with the bishop hitting the rook so much as the queen being attacked here and kind of virtually checkmated. So that's good for white as well. So bishop f5 seems to be a necessary move. White castles, which actually vacates cleverly the e1 square here. So that means that now queen c2, for example, this wasn't played, there would be queen e1, which is sufficient, and actually not just sufficient but very, very good. For example, rook c8, knight g3, so the queen is protecting c3, facilitating this knight g3. And here this is just really nice with e4. Black would be in big trouble here, for example like this, with the center opening up like this. There's all of a sudden a knight d6 check now. The queen's actually magnificent on e1, pinning the e7 pawn. So say e6, d5, yeah, this is just devastating, winning a piece here. This is winning a piece for white. And if e takes, even worse, of course. If we go back here and play e takes, knight d6 check, and that's checkmate either there or there. So some horrors here in the position. Okay, so let's go back. So in the game, so queen e1, it is pretty nifty as a response, but queen c2 isn't played. We have rook c8. So how can white possibly justify this position now? Well, it seems in this position f3 is played, and it's a very, very powerful idea to really make use of this bishop pinning the knight. What needs to happen here is d5. So f3 is making way for e4 and trying to break through with d5. We have a6, bishop a4, and now the queen goes back to b6. Let's see if a normal move like e6, e4, this position, and actually rook takes b7 undermines c6. So for example here, actually rook b3, the queen is also being trapped here in this line as well, which is not very pleasant. So that black has to be really, really careful about how to play this position. It does seem very, very dangerous. Queen e7, then the e file. Yeah, it's just nasty. So queen b6, e4 though. White, Leela, is opening up the position with the black king still in the center. This has been a lot of time wasted to do these queen maneuvers back to b6. We have d takes e4 on bishop g6, as you can expect. E takes d5, and that's a big advantage for white, winning that knight there in broad daylight. So d takes e4, f takes, and we have knight takes e4 here. On bishop takes e4, this doesn't fare much better. Knight takes, and king after king h1, the d pawn is unpinned. Important unpinning tactic, which means d5 is on the way. So for example, e6, d5, this is crushing this position. After queen f5, this is a key move, gaining a very, very important tempo, with the black king still in the center. And this scenario, for example, is devastating. Yeah, because c6 is a major issue again. There's just no it's and also rook c1's on the way, so black would have to give up a piece. So yeah, these scenarios where bishop takes e4 do black no favors. So knight takes e4 was chosen, and again after knight takes, black is unfortunately losing a piece out of the opening. That seems to be the punishments handed out here for black's earlier greed. King h1 is a prelude to d5, e6, d5, and black needs to give up the piece actually. If e takes d5, this is just worse, even worse, because after knight takes, it's a magnificent knight check, and then for example knight takes e7, devastation. So d5, black has to give up a piece, and for a moment it seems difficult actually to win this, surely, because there are free pawns for the piece. Bishop c2, that is challenging one of black's better pieces. Rook d8. If black had castled here, then Leela could take on g6, and this position is very, very nice, as you'd expect. This kind of situation, a piece up, is really quite comfortable. And eventually, you know, for example, there are scenarios losing c5. So rook d8, we have queen e2, bishop takes, queen takes, black castles, and now knight e4 was chosen. I personally thought rook f3 was an interesting try as well. So this is okay as well to go for a direct attack, but it's pretty solid for black. However, white still maintains a good advantage. This approach with knight e4 seems actually more straightforward in many respects, with knight g5 trying to encourage black to give up the bishop, which black obliges. If instead the threat is checkmate on h7 here, and if g6 is played here, then knight f3, and this position is really strong for white. e6 is dropping, for example. Yeah, it's just a piece up for just 2 pawns now in this scenario. It's getting easier and easier to convert this. The bishop might reroute back to c3 here and torture f6 from there. So let's see, in the game, bishop takes, rook d5, bishop e3, h6, rook ab1, queen c7, queen c4. This blocks that c pawn. Sometimes c4 is actually useful for black. That is one of black's most important passed pawns here. And for example, this move might demonstrate a little bit that it's not so comfortable. White still has an edge, but you can see that that pawn is dangerous. In this particular position, there happens to be a way of white, even here, getting an advantage though with bishop takes h6, with the idea of rook takes d3, exploiting that pinned pawn. And if rook takes f3, queen e5 is just good for white. And you might think, well, hold on, rook takes f3 here and take the bishop. This is still winning because check, and then queen d2, and there's no easy way of defending against h6 here. So this position, if actually king h7, king h7 looks like an interesting thing here. Let's have a look at king h7. Okay, I think the problem here is actually rook h3. White just plays rook h3. Okay, that looks convincing enough. So yeah, this line I'd previously analysed, but not taken account of king h7. But I think just rook h3 there. So here, this is all. The c pawn doesn't have to move. Basically, I think that's the main point to make here. So Leela's move suppresses that c pawn positional move, piece up. For quite a few pawns at the moment, still 3 pawns. So one would think this is going to be a bit tricky. So this is a nice positional move, restraining c5. Queen c6, we have h3. Rook, the rook's double there. So black looks coordinated, king g1. And now h5, black starts lashing out a bit with h5 here. White can potentially build up in this position on the c-pawn. There's a couple of plans which maybe have caused black to panic. Plan A might be a4 and a5 and then rook b6, or just rook c1, or maybe even just keep that rook on the b file and just use the other one. There's various plans here, but black starts to seemingly want to do something super aggressive over here with this move, h5. We have queen f4, which directly hits now f7, rook f5, and now queen h4 hitting d8. Black takes the opportunity to exchange off a pair of rooks. On rook e8, Leela could double the pawns and slip the bishop back to f2. This is a very comfortable position, where in fact, yeah, this endgame is just very nice. c5 is going to drop. But otherwise, if black doesn't offer the exchange of queens, yeah, maybe just taking c5 is on the cards soon. So with rook d5 as support as well. So let's go back. So black decided, simplify, rook d5, but now the queen slips into e7. So putting some pressure on c5 and also f7. We have rook d7, which lets go of the c5 pawn. If black had played rook f5, then yeah, we could just take here and take here as white. So yeah, black's now only has only two pawns to show for the piece. So is this going to be easy to convert? Again, another aggressive pawn move on the king side. And in fact, these pawns are vulnerable in their own right now. They're being pushed aggressively, but rook e1, yeah, this is starting to be dangerous because white can now maybe step the king out, potentially, to hit g4. If king f2 immediately, then this is still okay for white, but why lose the a pawn in a hurry? Yeah, we have rook d7, bishop b4, rook b7, a3, rook b6. The king steps out now. f5, king g3. Yeah, the king's wandering around on these dark squares, either this direction or even this direction. Is interesting. King f7, king f4, king f6, check, and now king g5. Very aggressive infiltration with the king. Rook b8. We have suppressing the e pawn now. Bishop e5 hitting the rook. Rook b5, bishop f4, g3. This is very desperate stuff, really. It's not really doing anything much. It's actually ignored here. There might be some possibilities of rook b3, but white just ignores things by playing rook e2. We have king e7, and now here actually bishop takes g3 is played. Rook b3, bishop f4. Okay, now rook b5 was played. You might think, hold on, what about rook takes a3? Actually, in this scenario, king g6, for example, and g3, this is very nice. It's the rook b7 is going to come in and king f6. So black would be much worse off now. So black didn't bother taking on a3. We have rook b5, rook e5, And the evaluation of both sides was more than 6.5 for a few moves. And after rook c2 is adjudicated, there's a win for Leela. So no endless game here. It's just 1-0 here. Game ended. A continuation could be king g6, for example, king g7 to stop rook g8, for example, and now bringing the rook over like this, and for example take this pawn. It's just all over. There's nothing for black to do really. It's easy to win this a piece up. So I'll take you to the game end position. So in a nutshell, what do we learn from this game? It seems even the top engines sometimes are a bit greedy in the opening and can end up playing opening violations which even an over the board under 2000 player would be cynical about taking pawns in the opening, because as humans we generally just we're told to like get our pieces out and castle and stuff like that as high priority to sort of go beyond defeat before indulging in active operations, the art of war principles in the opening. But here it seems those art of war principles were neglected. Black went on to active operations, maybe prematurely, and the potential for backfire is there. It exists there theoretically, and although we as humans might not be able to punish engines, Leela is just like superhuman, can actually expose this opening violation. It seems was exposed by this f3 and e4 plan, very energetic, opening up the center, and the whole bishop b5. It seemed that there was duality in the variations, as you saw. Bishop b5 on the one hand was helping trap the queen with things even like knight a4 sometimes, or bishop a4, and on other times it was holding the c6 knight firmly for rook b7 to be snapping off that knight. But the importance of that pin as well was really echoed for this f3 e4 plan for d5. So a magnificent exploitation of black's greed, but it just shows you that, yeah, sometimes the top engines in the world are pretty ambitious. If they set their calculations up from the opening, they can end up making major opening violations which we would find a little bit strange. So anyway, comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. And I should say, yeah, Leela got through with this win. This was the sudden knockout. So it is through to the next round, and it will be against the Fire chess engine. So check out TCEC to follow that match with interest against the Fire chess engine. And then if Leela manages to win that, then unfortunately on this side of the knockout draw will be the mighty Stockfish to challenge in just the semi-final, unfortunately. But it should be fun to watch. Thanks very much.